Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Maybe I'm supposed to be starting to talk. I'm the author, the writer of the book, You Can Control Your Government, which is a book about how to restore democracy to the citizen, which is something that we all should want and we all know we haven't got. It's a book which describes the means of utilizing referendums to decide issues. And of course, not all issues would be needed to be decided that way. You elect representatives still to do much of the work. But if you don't like what they decided upon, you can alter it by the use of a referendum, or you can introduce an idea that they hadn't seemed to be interested in by way of a referendum. And how does this happen? Well, you can get my book and you can read how it's done. It's a short book, less than 100 pages. And it describes the most significant area where it's done, and it's done extraordinarily well, namely Switzerland. Now, Switzerland is a rich and interesting country that is very highly educated and very international in their involvements in the world. And they oughtn't to be, because they're surrounded by 4 big countries. They have no natural resources. And they have 4 official languages, for heaven's sakes. You'd think it would be crumbling, but it's extremely effective in its manner of handling issues by the use of, for many years, the aspect of referendums. They elect their representatives, the same as in the States. They're members of their cantons, as they call them, rather than states. And federally, their national leadership. Basically exactly the same as in the States, with more or less representatives of the states, and as well, they elect, or they have, a group of 7, which represent the executive. They don't elect a president. But in any event, they do things very well. And one of the main reasons they do it is that they utilize referendums a lot. And this can be done as a result of rules that were established and improved upon many years ago and part of the governing of the country. There's a way that if you have an issue that you think should be changed or a rule that you think should be effected, you can write it out, the change you want. And then there's an organization, some administration you have to go to make sure the wording is clear and it's not prejudiced against anybody or anything, and fits the jurisdiction that you're wanting to have it determined at, whether it's cantonal or the statewide or countrywide. The wording okay, then you have to get a certain number of people to sign that issue to see that they're as interested in the determination of it as you are. So you have about 2 or 3 months with the help of others, to do that. And so now I have a question about how does the book address the role of technology? Well, it's very much more easy to utilize the referendum with having the modern technology, because you can communicate now so much better than you used to be able to. So it empowers citizens only if you have the rules to do it. So you have to persuade them at the beginning of things, as they had to do in Switzerland. You have to persuade the elected representatives that you would like to see the opportunity to use referendums and effect certain rules to make sure they work properly. So once you get the referenda law in your jurisdiction, then people who have issues can bring them forward. And if they get enough people to support them, then bring it forward at the general election period as an issue to see where the majority of the citizens in the area are in favor. And it's a little bit of trouble, of course, but it's a very effective way to get the citizenry involved in creating a really proper democracy. And it's done, as I say, in one country, namely Switzerland. How does the Swiss government differ from the others? It doesn't really differ. It's got elected representatives exactly the same as in the United States. They don't have a president, but other than that, the cantons or states have the representatives, and there are some that are elected federally. So it doesn't differ, but it does have laws within it that allow referendums. So that's part of the laws of the country. And you can do the same thing in the United States if you had enough people like yourselves who could persuade the elected representatives now present to implement this as a means of getting more citizen involvement. You say my discussions have been informative. Well, thank you. But if you read the book, you'd get the details, because there's a lot of details involved. You have to know just why it should work. And we don't have to worry about the fact that you only have one person making a decision for you, name your representative. You have a group of people within your jurisdiction that makes the decisions. When the group, some from the group, a sufficient number from the group want that, you still have representatives. They still do a good part of the work involved in your government. But where you want to change something, you can effectuate that if you get enough people to agree at the time that the petition or the referendum is brought forward to them, which would normally be at every election period. So that's how it works. It's a manner of democracy. It's so much more proper and it's so much more democratic than the system that we now use, where you do elect a representative. He has to be a nice person, or she does. But after that, you have absolutely no control in what they decide. And of course, we realize a lot of what they decide are things that we wouldn't like. But furthermore, they may not even think about aspects that we would like them to. And we can effectuate these changes and do these things through referendums. Some states have pretty good referendum laws, California, Oregon. They often use it, although it's not quite as effective as Switzerland's because it's not as detailed in its formation. There are aspects that could be improved upon there, obviously. But it's certainly a system that works. And I think we're all interested in democracy. We want it to be proper. We want our rules to be rules for the majority of people, not just an idea of some representative that happens to feel for the few years that he or she is elected that he or she is a person to make the decisions. So that's basically how the referendums work and how you can control your government by having these things to implement when it's appropriate. It's in Switzerland, for example, they might have half a dozen referendums each year, maybe enough issues like that people are interested in. Half of them might be approved by the majority and half may not. Anyway, how does it contribute to bring our ideas of democracy into the 21st century? Well, obviously it does, very much so. Are there specific aspects of contemporary society? Well, nothing special. Issues come up all the time. There are changed things that we are concerned about and have come up in the past. There might be a little bit more often this happening because communication is so much better now. And we're hearing and seeing, reading so much more through the current better means of communication. But there's nothing special about any part of the society that one might address, although some of you might think of some. And maybe it could come up, an aspect that every sort of potential issue is an aspect that I guess you could say is contemporary, but certainly it is something we need. This democracy is falling apart around us. And as we know, as we recognize, as we see all the time, and as we get upset, we don't even bother going to elect a lot of the representatives. We know what difference does it make, which is wrong, because we should be involved in the decision making. That's what a democracy is supposed to be, but we're not. Anyway, that's what the book describes. And it's short, and it should get it. You can get it from Amazon or Barnes and Noble. I think they might cost $3. You can get it in that form and read about it, and then you can talk to your neighbor or your friend, or just pursue the idea on your own to try to get your elected representative to implement that into the laws of your country, of your state. And that's once you get rules of referendum within your laws of your area, then you can see how it can be utilized now and again to alter or change the rules as the citizenry want, not as some representative or two or three want. And because our democracy seems to be falling apart, it seems to me even more important than ever that we try to find a way to implement referenda into our society, in our decision making of our province, our city, our country. And the book describes this pretty well, and it's straightforward. It's short. It doesn't glamorize anything, but it does show how it can work. It's not just talking. It's not just thinking about it. It actually does work extraordinarily well. And you just have to go to Switzerland and visualize it, see it, realize how it works so effectively there, and has for years, even though they have a very similar basic governmental structure as the United States and other similar countries. So I don't know whether this is an issue that you think you could follow up with, but it's straightforward. You could get the book and have others read it, your kids read it, etc. Well, how do you envisage the potential impact of the book? Well, the impact would be considerable if people would pursue the ideas set out there. And so you could see changes in just about everything that isn't working well. The ideas that come about in your community will be different from the state next to you. Rules are being followed or not followed and need to be changed, no doubt, in all kinds of different ways. And they can be done by citizenry and involvement. So that's what democracy is supposed to be. Supposed to be the determination of situations within the community by the citizens, not by a representative or a group of representatives. I'm not sure this question that got in front of me, it wasn't filled. Positive changes. Well, the country would be run better. It would be run more democratically. It would no doubt be run cheaper. It would be run more. The taxes would no doubt be less because things would be run better. And this would be a help to the majority of citizens. And that little detail alone could be an aspect of considerable change. But that's not by any means the most important thing. It's the rules and many laws that we've got all over the place that could be improved upon by the citizenry getting more involved. Well, how do you suggest encouraging this? Well, you can do that. You can encourage your neighbors or your friends or your kids, your relatives. You're absolutely right. It fosters a sense of responsibility because right now the citizens haven't got any real responsibility. They can't do anything. All they can do is elect a representative. They can talk about it, of course, which is at least an aspect of freedom, but you can't realistically alter anything unless you really get the issue before the public and have them decide as a result of reading what the issue is and having an opportunity to make a decision at the time the referenda is brought forward. It takes a few years to get the ideas properly decided upon and determined. And of course, you can't have referendums coming forward every week or every month. You'd have to have a determination of when they would be brought before the public. And normally that would be at the same time as your elections, every 4 years. But over time, this would certainly encourage civic engagement and foster a real sense of responsibility among the citizens. It's certainly a good thing to see and would be a good thing to have happen. And sometimes we can see irresponsible things happening a lot more now than we used to just a few years ago. So it's even maybe more important now as the communication speed expands to have opportunities to restore responsibility to the citizens to overcome the problems that seem to be hampering our enjoyment of life so often these days. So it's a book which is simple to read and everybody should read it. What can I say about how people decide their officials? Well, this wouldn't change if you have referendums, likely. You still elect officials or representatives, if you're talking about the officials as being a representative. And that's okay. But you also can, they don't determine everything. There's normally a group of people that in your parliament or decision-making body that decides things. And the issue of referenda can be brought before it and determined if enough people realize how it's significant, important, and desirable it is to have happen. And that's a difficult thing to do, however, because as we know it, a referendum is something that sometimes takes away power, often takes power away from the representative, and they may not like that. But the power should have been and should be in the citizens, not the representative. Well, what societal issues have I discussed? I really haven't discussed any societal issues. There's so many of them that come up all the time, which you in your area no doubt have differently than I do in mine. So there are some rather extraordinary ones that have come before referendums in Switzerland that you wouldn't imagine that the people would want to, but did want to decide upon. One of the interesting issues not long ago seemed crazy, but somebody felt some new Muslim mosques were causing awkwardnesses in their, likely it would cause them in their community, and they thought a way to overcome that is not to eliminate Muslims in their area, but simply to pass a law that says that the towers can only be so tall. Oh, isn't that ridiculous? But the mosques of Muslim have towers in which every few hours or every day things are rung, bells are rung, and things are said that are annoying to a lot of people. There's nothing changing the religion. You still have the religion, but they reduce to a great extent the annoyances that some people have felt about it. That's a simple issue, a really strange one that happened to come up in Switzerland within the last few years. And who would have ever thought that could be an issue that the majority of the public would agree upon and cause no consternation or problem anywhere, but work. But there's so many others that happen. Location even of a road sometimes can be determined because it goes too close to an old folks home. Maybe it's a little more expensive to move it, but if the majority of people think it's a good idea, then it should be done. And they can vote on it and see that it is done. But there's issues of strangeness like those that have come up, but every canton has different ones every year, just as your area, your community would have the same situation happen. Sometimes they vote in favor and sometimes they oppose it. But you might think, well, are citizens as good at making these decisions as our elected representative? And I would say, yes, they definitely are, as long as it's well expressed. And there is a agency to which this question, a referendum question, would go, who would make sure that the wording is clear and that it fits the jurisdiction that it's being pressed upon. And so these issues are often unexpected and really depends upon the imaginations, I guess, and the determinations of people in your community, just what issues they're worrying about or they don't like. The taxes are too high. There's even rules related to that can be effected through referenda. And California is a good example of where it worked extraordinarily well, that issue. But you name anything that you want, that you know about, that's legal or illegal, or that you think could be changed by law. And that could be the subject of a referenda, as long as referenda are allowed as a way of changing the law in your community. The book tries to encourage people, yourselves, to get your elected representative to do it. He won't do it automatically because he likes to think he's the decision maker of everything. But if you do it enough with enough people, he'll realize that this is a majority opinion and see that his cohorts will go along with encompassing that in the law of your area. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's certainly a means of improvement, and we sure need that to happen. As I think most of you know, our democracy in a lot of ways is going crazy. Well, those are a lot of the thoughts that I have about this subject. It's a thing that didn't happen overnight in Switzerland, although they've had these referenda initiatives for many, many years. You can utilize it, though, their end results as an example. You don't have to go through the years of discussion that they did to know that it works. And the various details are established in a country that has similar people, although it's a rather much more complicated country, and you wouldn't think things like this could work very well, but they have implemented them to work very effectively. And so that's the example you need to or could use is to follow to help see just what needs to be implemented. But you do have to persuade your representatives of this. And they, as I say, are not easily persuaded unless you get a number of others that will back you in getting these laws, these referendum laws, a part of the laws of your area. And it won't happen overnight, as I said, but it's worth the trouble if you can just do it because our democracy is important and we don't want to see it completely destroyed. We want to see it still a part of our lives in the distant future, but working better than it's being done now. Well, I don't know whether I can do more, do talk about this. The book I first wrote is here. Where does it show? That shows the size of it. It's just 6x9, small book, and it does describe, though I think you will find very shortly in few words, just how it works, why it needed, where it can be done, and it has various issues within it that as examples of the sorts of things that the citizens can decide upon and should decide upon. They happen every year, every few months, something comes up that really should be altered, changed, fixed, improved. And one way the citizens can do it is by implementing referendums, and after they've been decided that it's a proper issue for a decision, then voting in the way that they want. You might lose, and sometimes the referendums aren't followed, aren't agreed upon. Well, that's understandable. It's the majority of the citizens that should be making these decisions, not just one or two or half a dozen people. But that's the way it works, the way it should work, and the way you can make it work. If you would take the time to think about it and talk to your friends about it and try to get your representatives to go along with it, and that way improve a lot your country, your state, your county, your city. You can have these referendum in any of those various aspects of your community. So I hope you manage to do this, and good luck. Democracy is an awfully important thing that you people can help to improve. Thanks.